Fires it for the end zone. Kelce, great catch, touchdown! They're going to throw a fade pattern to the far side. Breland intercepts it. Touchdown! Kansas City! An incredible one-handed catch by DeMarcus Robinson. The throw is Flacco. Again being pressured. He's hit. The ball's out. The ball is picked up by Ragland. Touchdown! It's a Sammy Watkins Palooza. Touchdown! Kansas City!
Hey, that's dope.
Welcome to Estadio Azteca here in Mexico City. Tonight, it's the 6-4 Chiefs and the 4-6 Chargers in a key AFC West divisional game here south of the border on Monday Night Football. The field is looking great, and more than 80,000 fans will be here tonight. The Chiefs have won 23 of their last 25 against the AFC West and 9 of 10 against the Los Angeles Chargers, but the Chargers got the last one against the Chiefs there at Arrowhead Stadium. I'm Chiefs reporter BJ Kissel, joined as always by this guy and 10-year NFL vet and former linebacker Shawn Barber. Shawn, taking all the hoopla of coming down to Mexico City, of giving these nice hats and these nice jackets right here thanks to the team store at Arrowhead Stadium, but you take all this out of it, this is a huge football game between two teams looking for a W tonight for two different reasons.
Well, we talk about the playoff push. It starts right now. Week 11 is where teams got to either you're in or you're out. You got to go all in or all out. You got to get healthy. You got to go. You got to be ready to roll. And I think the Chiefs are coming here with purpose and a passion to win this ball game and stay on top of the AFC West.
And we have got a fantastic show. We're going to break it all down here again at Estadio Azteca. I've been practicing that all week, Shawn. I've got it down. But we've got a great show. The X Factor, Dante Hall, is going to join us here in a little bit. I also caught up with ESPN's Louis Riddick. We've got story time with Mitch Holthus. Matt McMullen has got a stat and a record that could be broken tonight that you guys need to know. But for this one right now, with the way the Chiefs have been playing at 6-4 right now, knowing the Raiders won this week also at 6-4, this is a huge game. And when you get in prime time, you get in these situations, this is when you need your stars to show up.
Hey, stars have got to make big-time players, make big-time plays in big-time games. And no game is bigger than Monday Night Football. All cards are on the table here in Azteca Stadium, here with our Chiefs going against those Chargers.
And we know this is going to be a close game. In Patrick Mahomes' career, he's got 9 losses. All of them have been within one possession. Like we mentioned, that game last season against the Chargers, just 1 point, 29-28 victory that went all the way down to the wire with the 4-yard touchdown pass from Phillip Rivers to Mike Williams, and they got the 2-point conversion. Most Chiefs fans remember that, and that's all we're going to talk about with that game. We don't need to bring those memories back up, but this should be a fun one tonight. And to get this thing started, let's look at the inactive players for both teams. Just a little bit ago, I left the officials meeting, and there's good news for the Chiefs in that both left tackle Eric Fisher and starting right guard Laurent Duvernay-Tardif are both active for the Chiefs. So for the first time since going all the way back to the first week of the season, the Chiefs will have their entire starting offensive line intact and back, which is great news. But for the Chargers, it's the opposite. They're missing some of their starters, and Russell Okung, their starting left tackle, is not going to play tonight, and neither is Sam Tevy. Their right tackle is not going to go. So they are going, let me make sure I get this right, they're going with Trent Scott at left tackle and Trey Pipkins at right tackle. Scott is a second-year player at Grambling State, and Pipkins is a rookie third-round pick out of the University of Sioux Falls. So you're looking at that, and then we'll break it all down with Phillip Rivers later in this show. But you look at the pressures, and Phillip Rivers has been under a pressure a lot this season. And I don't know how old he is, 37, 38, 36, whatever he is. He doesn't move quite as well as maybe he did earlier in his career. Still not a guy who's going to get out and scramble. But the fact that their offensive line is banged up, that's going to be a huge storyline going into this one.
Definitely. If you look at it, it's like a tale of two different halves. We started the season missing 150 of odd quarters of football from our starting lineup. And now other teams are fighting some of that same injury bug that we had to face in the early parts of the season, while we're now getting healthy. All hands on board, and we're going to see what this offensive line looks like for the Chiefs with everybody active and ready to go.
Yeah, and that takes us into our first what-to-watch point in this game, and that is the fact that the offensive line is all together. And when we saw that game against the Jaguars, that first quarter, when the offensive line, everybody was healthy, they were clicking on all cylinders, and they were getting after it. I'm excited to see what this offense could do, knowing they got all those guys back, and the fact that it's in prime time and everyone's going to get to see it is going to be exciting as well. But we saw Patrick Mahomes last week in the return without this starting offensive line go out, throw 446 yards and 3 touchdowns against the Tennessee Titans. And now, granted, it was in a losing effort, and we saw him kind of taking quite a bit. He got hit a little bit in that game against the Titans. Hopefully, with the starting offensive line back, he's protect it a little bit more, give him some time to get the ball down the field.
Man, in the same breath I talk about Barry Sanders being an ultra elusive running back, it didn't matter who was blocking from the barrier, he still made you pay. Pat is kind of in that same mode, right? He's a Hall of Fame quarterback in the verge of breaking out week after week. He's able to make play after play, and he's been taking advantage of zone defenses his whole career, and that's what he does best. When you play zone, his pinpoint accuracy, it goes to the top level, makes him an elite quarterback in the league.
Yeah, and as we talked, the offensive line might be back, but even if they give him enough time, that's not to say that it's going to be easy to pick up passing yards against this Chargers defense. They rank number 2 in the league in pass defense, allowing just 207 yards per game. One of those names you don't want to hear very often today. Pro Bowl cornerback Casey Hayward gets a lot of pub, but Desmond King is the guy that always seems to be making plays for them, whether it's in the special teams in the return game, because he returned one last week, or if it's just making plays on the ball.
Yeah, you know, pass coverage always comes down to one thing. Can you get pressure on the quarterback, get him off his spot? And Bosa and Ingram, they do that. Like those bookends are two of the best in the league. And so when you're a secondary guy, you can jump plays. It allows you to be so much more aggressive when you know those guys are always bearing down on your quarterback on every down.
Yeah, you're looking at that chess match, that game within the game. It'll be interesting to see if it's Blake Bell or Travis Kelce or the running backs get there and help chip on those edge rushers coming off. And the one thing we talked about for 3 years with Joey Bosa and with Melvin Ingram, with them out there together, is those TE stunts. They are so good. They get into third and long situations. Those guys will line up right next to each other, and they will twist and stunt and do all kinds of things to try to create leverage and try to create mismatches or miscommunication along the offensive line. It's not like it's going to be a huge secret to the Chiefs' offensive line, but it's definitely something they're going to have to deal with.
Yeah, and his mobility is going to be something that he's going to have to rely on early and often throughout the ball game, no matter what the situation. If he sniffs Bosa and Ingram coming after him, he's going to be able to escape the pocket, and he's one of the most accurate quarterbacks on the run in the league. So it's damned if you do, damned if you don't. Keep him in the pocket, put him on the run. Pat's going to get it done.
All right, right now, Shawn, let's send it to my younger self, because about 2 hours ago, I got up with ESPN's Louis Riddick to talk Patrick Mahomes, who he's always been calling Ferrari since Mahomes first came into the league. He also talked about Andy Reid, Brett Veach, Rick Burkle, all those guys that he spent 5 years with in Philly. Here's me catching up earlier today with Louis Riddick. All right, thanks for joining us, Louis. You know these guys very well on the Chiefs side. You know Rick Burkle, you know Andy Reid, you know Brett Veach from your 5 years with those guys. Before we get to this game tonight, I want to know, what's your best story of being around those guys for all those years in Philly?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many. There's so many great ones. But I'll tell you what, with Brett in particular, because he was in personnel, in coaching, with Coach Reid, he kind of like did a little bit of everything. We used to hang out and talk a lot. We used to always talk about working out. We'd always, like about 5, 6 o'clock in the afternoon up there in Philly, we'd talk about trying to get downstairs and get a workout. It never got to the workout. We go in the steam room and just hang out in there and just talk. We solved all the world's problems multiple times. Who knows? He doesn't need much of my help now, but he used to have a good time.
All right, now I got to ask you about the quarterback that they brought in, because you have not been shy over the years for your affinity for Patrick Mahomes, who you refer to as Ferrari.
Yeah,
First of all, can you explain that, Nick? He's got a lot of nicknames. He's go with Showtime, Ferrari. You've stuck by Ferrari from the beginning.
Yeah.
What is it about that?
You know why? Because, I mean, when Alex was still there and Pat was a rookie, and then, you know, all the times I would talk to Brett about how good he was, I just said, hey, it's going to be like having a Ferrari in the garage, and you're just going to take the car cover off of it, and everybody's going to be like, dang, that's what you got hiding in there? So that's why I always just stuck with it. And then you guys wear red, and it's fast, and it's sleek, and it's pretty. That's why I'm never going to Showtime. You'll always be Ferrari to me.
Yeah, I don't know what the analogy is, but he's got a couple of his horses up front with Eric Fisher and Laurent Duvernay-Tardif coming back tonight. Curious, because you've been around Andy Reid and you have a unique perspective on this. What is it about the marriage between Andy Reid and the creativity and what he likes to do offensively and personnels and moving guys around, formations, all the matchups that he finds, and Patrick Mahomes, who gets all the credit in the world for his physical abilities, but his mental ability to diagnose what's happening out on the field? Just what's special about that to you?
Well, I think there's a high level of trust first and foremost. Andy really trusts Patrick to really test his limits within the confines of the game, you know, not to put the team in jeopardy, but he really trusts him to test his limits. And he doesn't feel like there's anything anywhere that he can't go with the game plan with a guy like this. And I think when you have that kind of mutual trust and you have that kind of respect, look, Pat obviously respects Andy's ability to develop players and then put them in great positions, especially quarterbacks, then you have the perfect marriage. And I think what you see is that manifests itself out on the field with a guy who will attempt left-handed passes, no-look passes, throw passes across the field, throw passes 70 yards down the field, and the coach never blinks. And when you have that kind of backing, that kind of what I like to call sponsorship, sky's the limit.
And we've seen prime time, we've seen Showtime show up in prime time quite a bit throughout his career. Now, before we let you go and get to your ESPN responsibilities, just what are you looking forward to most to seeing tonight between the two teams?
I think this is going to be a scoring fest, and I don't know if Kansas City Chiefs fans want to hear that, but look, there's obviously some work to do on the defensive side for them. I think this will be a game that easily goes into the 30s, maybe the 40s in terms of scoring. I'm really looking to see, in particular, to see Pat kind of announce to the nation, announce to the world, obviously, since we're out of the country right now, that all this talk about the MVP race this year, why am I not being talked about? When my numbers are just as good as everyone else's and I play 2 fewer games. I think tonight he's going to kind of let people, or remind people, I'm the reigning MVP for a reason.
Thank you very much. For you guys, if you're watching, you already know who he is. Catch all of his stuff on ESPN tonight before the broadcast. And right now we're going to send to Mitch Holtis for this week's Story Times. He breaks down everybody that was involved helping get this game down here in Mexico.
Well, this week's Story Time deals with the Chiefs playing internationally, looking at the past, present, and the future. First of all, a shout out to the folks that are helping sponsor this trip by the Chiefs to Mexico City to play the Chargers. That includes Kansas City Southern Railroad, also Lockton Companies, and Burns & McDonnell. The Chiefs started playing internationally early in 1990. They went to Berlin to play the Rams. It was a preseason game. And then later in the 90s, the Chiefs went to Tokyo on 2 separate occasions. In 1994 to meet the Vikings in a preseason game, and then later in 1998 to meet the Packers in Tokyo. In between that was a previous trip to Mexico. The Chiefs played the Dallas Cowboys in a preseason game in front of a huge crowd in Monterrey, Mexico. Now this game this week against the Chargers, of course, a very important and pivotal divisional game. But it has taken a year-long approach in getting ready for the trip to Mexico City. I always say it takes a village to surround the team, and Patrick Mahomes has taken a small army to get ready for this game in Mexico City. First of all, the Chiefs equipment staff is sending 20,000 pounds of equipment south of the border to Mexico City. It has taken a lot of work and organization by Alan Wright and his crew. Mitch Reynolds of the Chiefs has been on this case for a year. Something's required called a carnet, meaning all of the equipment that is going to this game has to be cataloged with a serial number. Now think about all the equipment that goes outside of football. Our 65 TPT crew and their equipment. Also, the Chiefs Radio Network equipment, still photography, the Chiefs coaches video, and much, much more. Another big area is security. Chiefs Vice President for Security, Jeff Miller, along with Brian Schaefer and others, have worked for the entire year on making sure this is a seamless trip with lots of security, and working strongly in conjunction with the folks in Mexico and with the National Football League. And then there's the future of international games. I don't think it's that far into the future that every NFL team will play 8 home games, 8 away games, and a 17th game added to the regular season that will be an international game and played at locations all across the world. So this game for the Chiefs against the Chargers in Mexico City, much like the game in 2015, which required all the same work in going to London when the Chiefs beat the Detroit Lions, is just an example of something that will happen, I think, on a yearly basis.
Great stuff there from Mitch Holtis and the village that it took to get this game down here in Mexico City. And right now, we are going to bring in a guy that Chiefs fans throughout the ages, over the decades, have plenty of stories of that. Remember that time when Dante Hall, aka the X Factor, aka the human joystick, did such and such, whether it's the return against Denver or all the other returns that you had throughout your career. I know that you were a fan favorite, and as a player, there's nothing you can ask for more than having that legacy, still having 82 jerseys, still throwing up the X, and everybody knows exactly what that is. And we appreciate you coming down to Mexico City, and we appreciate you joining us on Field Pass.
And I appreciate you guys having me.
All right. How excited are for you for this game down there tonight? Prime time Monday Night Football.
Very excited. I was asking Shop earlier, like, man, don't you want to play in this game today? Like, I feel like putting on the pads, the cleats, and going out there and taking one to the house.
My answer was no. My neck hurt. I don't want no.
I didn't want to throw you under the bus, so I left that part out.
Listen, I'm a little soft my old age, but hey, let's go back to when we played, right? We always talked about what's the next play.
Yes.
Right? What's the next, no matter if you came off of a touchdown, I came after a big sack, we looked at each other and say, hey man, what's the next play? Each and every down. That's the kind of mentality these guys are gonna need. So seeing that and knowing that, what kind of mental mindset you think the defense and the offense have to be when they attack this field tonight?
I mean, you just said it. Whether it's a good play, a negative play, it doesn't matter. It's on to the next play. Yeah. What's the next move? And you got to have that mindset, because in a game like this, with Phillip Rivers and that offense and some of the guys they have on defense, they're going to make plays. Yeah. So you have to be resilient in the mind to be like, okay, that's done. That's behind us. Let's move forward, good or bad.
I love talking to offensive players about Andy Reid's scheme and how he designs plays. And you're the perfect person to ask because you play running back in college and you play wide receiver. You're a guy that got moved all around the place. And when you watch how Andy Reid moves his guys around, I can't help but think that you sit there and you just nod your head like, if I could have played with this dude.
Every single week, I think that to myself. And I also played, in the Dick Vermeil Greatest Show on Turf type offense, which at the time I thought was by far the best offense I had ever seen until I saw Andy Reid's offense. And I think we were doing chalk talk with a few guys on the personnel staff, and they said they go into every game with about 500 plays to choose from. That blew my mind. Absolutely blew my mind.
No, now, when we get back into it, man, I know as a wide receiver, you used to see linebackers like me, and you thought it'd be easy pickings. Now, I was an athletic linebacker, so it was no easy meals on shop. But this team we playing here, the Chargers, 65% of their defense is zone coverage. As a receiver, what do you got to think to try to beat that zone and give a quarterback like Pat Mahomes a great target?
So you got to first find the windows, obviously. Okay. And, you don't want to get into that window too fast. It's all about the timing, because if you get into a window too fast or you're too late, it throws everything off. So a guy like Tyreek or McCall Hardeman, you might want to throttle it down a little bit, opposed to running your route full speed like you would against man. This particular route, maybe, fourth gear opposed to fifth gear.
Yeah, those things they figure out during OTAs. And you see those guys out there in shorts, like, what kind of work can they be getting done? This is exactly what. You go up against different zone coverages. You find the zone, you find the holes in the zones and all that stuff that you guys are talking about. Now, before we let you go, I wish we could sit here and talk to you all night, but we're not able to do that as we're getting ready for kickoff here soon. Before we let you go, I want to know, what questions do you feel like the Chiefs could answer tonight if they go out there and put a good performance together?
That's a great question. I mean, I think the question that they would answer most is bouncing back from a tough loss. Because sometimes you can have a residual effect carrying into the next week, especially as the special teams, they had a couple of bad plays last week. We want to see them be flawless.
Thanks, BJ. Well, Dante Hall is one of the best kick returners of all time. I want to talk about a guy who has a chance of being one of the very best tight ends of all time. The league's been around for 100 years, and hundreds of guys have suited up at the tight end position. Guys like Kellen Winslow, Antonio Gates, Shannon Sharp, our very own Tony Gonzalez. But none of those guys have done what Travis Kelce has a chance of doing here tonight. Kelce is just 23 yards shy of getting 6,000 career yards in just 91 career games. He'd be the second fastest tight end to reach 6,000 career yards in NFL history, trailing only Rob Gronkowski. That is incredible. And I think we get pretty used to what Kelce does around here, but it's time we start realizing that we could be watching one of the very best careers for a tight end in NFL history right before our eyes. And his name is Travis Kelce. BJ, back to you.
There's some history, according to Matt McMullen, that could happen tonight with Travis Kelce. Hopefully it happens early in the game. He's had some pretty big performances in his career against the Chargers. Now let's flip to the other side in the second what to watch point, Shawn. And then I was talking Phillip Rivers.
Yes, sir.
Probably a future Hall of Famer, one of the guys that I love to see get frustrated during a game, to be completely honest. Hopefully the Chiefs get after him a little bit tonight. But it's been interesting to watch the Chargers play, because every year they're a hot name. And then they start off, they struggle a little bit, and then they make this run towards the end of the season. We're right in the middle of that run. The Raiders clipped them last week after they won a couple in a row. They made the decision to go with a new offensive coordinator, letting Ken Wisenhunt go, and this is Phillip Rivers' show.
Yeah, Phillip Rivers, I mean, he's going to have to make some adjustments with a new offensive coordinator, but I'm really interested to see what our D-line, Chris Jones, Frank Clark, all our guys getting them. I don't care who they line up at. Whether they get the starters or not, that's not our concern. We're going to have to make mincemeat out of whoever they put in front of us and got to get to that quarterback early and often.
Yeah, and as much as we make a point of saying this guy's out, that guy's out, the Chargers also know this. So there's a lot of things they can do. They can keep tight ends to protect, but that does send less guys out in the routes and in space and all that kind of stuff. So there is the give and take on either side. But no matter which way you look at it, Phillip Rivers has been pressured 149 times this season, which is the third most of any quarterback in the league. And when you put those numbers with, it's not Lamar Jackson. He's not there running all over the creation. You get pressure on him, there's a good chance you're going to bring him down. But Phillip Rivers also hangs in the pocket. He's not afraid to stand in there and take a shot. So that ability to get in there, get some pressure, maybe get a body on him to let one of those passes kind of deflect, fly up in the air, and let Honey Badger, let Juan Thornhill, let any of those DBs get their hands on the ball is going to be huge. But in talking with some of the guys, and I spent quite a bit of time this week talking with Tyrann Mathieu about what makes Phillip Rivers so difficult to game plan against. And what he said is that what Rivers is so good at is getting lined up early.
That's right.
Getting to the line and then seeing what they've got and doing that fake cadence and then seeing what they've got and then back off it, which means the focus for the Chiefs all week defensively has been trying to disguise what their coverages are. Now, you played in this league, and you're one of those guys tasked with trying to disguise what you're doing. How difficult is that as a defensive player?
Well, it's all about communication and trust. You got to trust that everybody is going to make their same disguise, and nobody's going to tee off a guy like Phillip Rivers. He's such a vet. I mean, he knows some of the tricks of the trades. But like you said, he's going to get on the ball early. He's going to allow us defensively to make moves. He wants to see if Honey Badger's going to come in, Juan Thornhill, who's going to be in the box, who's not, and who's going to be the free guy, so he can make adjustments to the receivers accordingly. He has some guys that can go up and make some jump ball plays, right? Keenan Allen and Williams. So he has the type of receivers that he can stay in the pocket a little bit extra and still put that ball down the field and just let it be a jump ball. And then the running game. They got some weapons in the running game. So if they keep it balanced and they can keep it out of Mahomes' hands, which every defense, every offense tries to do against our team, it could be a long day.
Yeah, I don't think Phillip Rivers is going to be checking to a lot of runs, though. Like, he's going to check into some passes. But that being said, he may be checking to passes to the running backs, which has been an issue for the Chiefs defensively. You go back to that game against the Green Bay Packers. Aaron Jones over 100 yards receiving, and they're facing a couple of running backs that are very good out of the backfield. And Melvin Gordon, who's just been back the last 3 games, looks like he's got his legs underneath him. He is a threat, whether he's carrying the ball or whether he's catching out of the backfield. And then Austin Eckler.
He's in the top 5. Yeah, he's top 5 running back.
Top 5 running back. He has the most receptions and the most receiving yards of any running back in the league. And a lot of that was stepping in when Melvin Gordon was holding out and wasn't out on the field. But you've got 2 guys that the Chiefs have to account for. And if they get the personnel they want, if the Chiefs are in like a base defense and you get some of those linebackers out on the field, you may see Phillip Rivers go tempo and try to keep that group on the field so he can hit those running backs out of the backfield.
Yeah, see, you're a veteran broadcaster. You know all the tricks of the trades that the quarterbacks use to try to keep us in those bad personnels. But no matter what personnel, as long as we got Chris Jones, Frank Clark, the hitman out there, and those guys are bringing up and revving that pressure, it should be a very long day for one Phillip Rivers.
Pressure normally leads to takeaways, and that is one thing the Chiefs have been very good at. In the last 10 games over the Chargers, they're 9-1. Phillip Rivers in those 10 games has 16 interceptions. The Chargers have 20 turnovers overall, which is a big reason why that they're 1-9 against the Chiefs over that time. And you're exactly right. It starts with Chris Jones, because you can have edge rushers, you can chip them, you can do all that. When you've got disruption on the interior and a guy like Chris Jones, that is the name of the game. And we saw it last week in Phillip Rivers in the loss to the Oakland Raiders. He had pressure. He threw 3 picks. One of those was returned for an interception by Eric Harris. That was the difference in that game.
Chris Jones has been a man on a mission. We know what the mission is, but the good thing for the Chiefs kingdom and the nation is that he's on our team doing it. He's making plays. He's being a leader by action, not a bunch of talk. He revs the guys up. He got it just a minute ago. He got the guys say, hey, man, it's about time, right? It's about being about it, not just talking about it, but we got to do what we got to do. I fully expect him to come out and have one of his best games. And overall for the D-line, I think this is going to be a game where they get multiple more. I'm like 15 hurries on Phillip Rivers today.
Don't talk about it, be about it. During that whole, we saw the offense are breaking it down. We saw the defense are breaking it down. Linebackers are out there. I almost thought you were going to jump in the middle of that. You're getting so fired up right now. He starts shaking a little bit, gets excited. But right now, let's pivot. And let's go around the league and talk a little bit about what we've seen so far, it being Monday night. The games are already completed. And the big one, because it's the Chiefs' next opponent after the bye week, are the Oakland Raiders. And they squeaked one out against the Cincinnati Bengals, because the winless Bengals had some opportunities in the second half of that game to go down and take the lead when they were just down 4. And then the Raiders got a late field goal to make it a 7-point game, and the Bengals still had a few opportunities, but Ryan Finley, their young quarterback they've gone to and benching Andy Dalton, he just couldn't get it done. Finishes 13 of 31 in that game. Wasn't the best opponent for the Raiders, but they still pull out the W.
Yeah, and with the league switching that game on December 1st to a later start, interesting that the Raiders are going to go to the Jets. And the Jets beat the Washington Redskins. They doubled them up 34-17. That can be a trap game for the Raiders. If they overlook the Jets, Sam Darnold, Bell, and Crowder and those guys, Anderson, they could come up and really beat the Raiders and ruin all their plans of trying to take over the #1 seed in the AFC West.
Yeah, Raiders 6-4 right now, tied with the Chiefs atop that division. Obviously, the Chiefs with the victory today can step up above them. They already beat them back in week 2 earlier in the season. But if you're talking about the Raiders, one of those guys, and actually talked with Andrew Wiley joking about it before this game, because one of his good friends from back in Eastern Michigan was the guy making plays all over the field for the Raiders yesterday, and their 4th-round pick, and Max Crosby. That defensive end. I spent quite a bit of time talking to Max Crosby at the Combine, and to see him have that kind of impact, I'm not happy about it. I don't want to see him out there making plays.
Doesn't he remind you a lot of our guy Jarrett, right? 6'9". I mean, comes from nowhere. You think he's a kicker or what? He goes out there, he has these long arms, he gets tremendous pressure, he has a great motor, and he just continues to make plays. He doesn't care what stage of the game, no situational ball. He's always coming. He has a great motor.
It's not pretty. It's not always the best technique as the guys, the color guys were talking about on the broadcast, but he gets it done, and so much of it's just effort. Don't quit on the play. It's not your first move. It's not your counter move. It's when the quarterback scrambles outside. Keep your head up. Get after it. He made plays, 4 sacks in that game. And now let's move on to another game that opened a lot of eyes. And the Baltimore Ravens go out and just absolutely smoking the Houston Texans, 41-7. Lamar Jackson, one of those MVP candidates, had 4 touchdowns, efficient in the passing game, 86 yards on the ground. This team, the Baltimore Ravens, is becoming one of the more complete teams, along with the New England Patriots and us, in the entire AFC.
Yeah, they're playing ball a little bit different style. That rushing quarterback phase of their game is something no one else can do at that level. And with the type of athlete they have, he's making. We had Dante Hall on the show.
Yep.
He might be the new human joystick with some of those 360 spin moves he's doing. But he's a human highlight reel on the field. One Lamar Jackson.
Absolutely. Now let's move on to our final thoughts on tonight's broadcast and tonight's game. And Shawn, we talk about it every week. We talk about margin of error, and we just talk about the season is a journey of ebbs and flows. It's a war of attrition when you go throughout the entire season, and every night you have an opportunity. And we saw the Chiefs basically give one away last week. They had some opportunities to pull out that win against the Titans. They didn't get it done. Now they have an opportunity to show the leadership, to show Andy Reid and everything that he is praised for throughout his entire career is getting guys ready and knowing that every week it's its own week. And they have a huge opportunity in a key divisional game to separate themselves and show the entire world that all those doubts they had that have been talked about all week since the Titans game, it's water under the bridge, and this is the team that we always thought they would be.
Yeah, the final thoughts, I like what I'm seeing defensively. You're seeing our pressure packages amping up. We're getting more pressure on the quarterback. We're stopping the run consistently, except for a play here and there. It all has to come together. Our offensive line is getting healthy. Pat Mahomes is back in the saddle. Our receivers are healthy. It's time to flick that switch, and it's time to make that playoff push. Get some momentum going into the playoffs so we can go wreak havoc on the playoffs.
You heard this guy. He knows what he's talking about. We appreciate you for joining us on Field Pass. The game is on ESPN. Afterwards, check out Chiefs Rewind as Shawn Barber and voice of the Chiefs, Mitch Holtis, will break it all down, and hopefully the Chiefs can go into the bye on a positive note. For all of us here at Field Pass and for Anna Topkin, I'm BJ Kissel, Shawn Barber. We appreciate you for watching.